engage, we have to get into the field and do something. It's not just you talk, you have to walk the talk. So that is one area that we really get into the field and we try to make a change. We try to become the change agent. So that's one area. And second one is the advocacy aspect. It's not that you have to every time get into the field. You have to work on advocacy, like campaigns, movements, policies, etc. So we work on both areas. Like I usually balance both the areas, action-oriented side as well as the advocacy aspect as well.
Okay, Husni?
Well, I started with solid waste management because when I was starting in 2005, I was thinking like from where to start, and then I realized it is all about changing attitudes. And then I thought like the best place to start from schools, and then how to start from schools. I mean, we can talk about climate change at once, so we should have some sort of initiative. So we start with the solid waste management. So I have been involved in a few campaigns and projects which is related to solid waste management mechanisms. And then as Sikand said, like it is important at one level. I mean, 2005 to 10 I have been involved in different local initiatives, but again, thanks to British Council Global Changemakers, we after 2010 to 2011 we also start working on regional level, where we start advocacy on different environmental issues, especially with the Rio Plus 20, and also there are some other discussions going on. So we start to mobilize young people to talk about these issues and what we can do as young people to create a greener tomorrow. So it's two areas of this.
Joanne?
Well, basically, like I mentioned earlier, I started with urban wetlands conservation, and my main aim was to give awareness to the people who were mainly in contact with that area. And once I had sort of reached the people in that area, I realized that education and awareness needs to be taken to a much broader level.
Yeah, of course.
So I work mainly with school students and educating them and making them aware about what they can do. A lot of people think that it's something that's left to policymakers, but in the end you hold the vote in the choices that you make. So that's basically what I focus on, and now I've gone on to taking my education and awareness program out of Colombo to areas like Kurunegala and Kegol and Kandy. So it's been a very interesting journey.
Interesting and impressive. Okay. So Joanne, let's start with you. You talk about eating local organic food. Isn't that a health issue? How does that relate to an environmental problem? I mean, I'm just because I'm clueless about that. So why don't you tell us how can eating local organic food is a solution for an environmental problem?
Well, that's quite a common question that a lot of people have. But if you think about it, a lot of food that gets imported adds on what we call food miles. So it's basically the miles that they gather up in being transported. So the more imported food that you consume, the more food that needs to be brought in. So that becomes an environmental issue in that sense. And also that's where local food becomes beneficial. And if you look at organic food, they don't use harmful chemicals or pesticides or fertilizers or things like that. So which in turn gets added into the water and becomes a huge environmental issue with accumulating in other food chains as well, and eventually affecting us. I mean, like the problem that there is in Sri Lanka right now.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, talking about that, let's get into a small video which will give us some very specific insight.
We think about transportation, we think about how we heat our houses, but in fact how we eat has just as big an impact on climate change. The average item of food in America has traveled 1,500 miles from the farm to your plate. It's burned up an incredible amount of fossil fuel just to get there. If you're eating lettuce, say, in New York that's been grown in California, one of those bags of pre-washed mixed lettuce, it takes 56 calories of fossil fuel energy to deliver 1 calorie of food energy to your plate. For the consumer to understand how much energy goes into their food, I think all they have to understand is, if it's local, it's less, and if it is unprocessed. A lot of the energy in our food comes from processing. All the complicated steps needed to make a Twinkie, all use vast amounts of energy. There are a great many other benefits to eating locally besides conserving energy. There is, I think, the very important benefit of keeping farmers in business. Farmers add a lot to a community. They have great wisdom about the natural world. And then there is the view. There's a wonderful bumper sticker in Europe called Eat Your View. And the premise is that if you don't support these agricultural landscapes around you, they will be sprawled. They will be covered with houses and highways and shopping malls. And the way to keep them open is to eat from the farms that constitute that view. And that's true. I mean, that's how you preserve those agricultural landscapes, is eating from those farms.
Yeah, Joanne, what do you think about that?
Well, that's very, very relevant to Sri Lanka as well. And something that that it touches on that it doesn't quite address in the video is how buying local food actually supports the local farmers as well.
Indeed,
so it becomes a sustainable development initiative as well. So it's definitely very relevant to Sri Lanka. I mean, why not support our local farmers and go local?
Yeah. So moving slightly away from that, how does food wastage affect our environment and makes it an environment issue? I want to ask you that question, but before you answer, I'm gonna go into a very, very small video once again. Right, so that video was very detailed and it was about basically how we waste food in everyday life. Joanne, why don't you, because I am personally very sensitive when it comes to food wastage and water wastage and stuff, so I really would like to know your insight about it.
Yeah, well, like the video showed, it gives it very much in detail, and the amount of energy. I think the previous video said 56 calories for 1 calorie of food, and this is 56 calories to just throw it back away. We're not making any use of it. I mean, it all ends up in a landfill, which ends up being turned into methane or other greenhouse gases, which ends up becoming a problem anyway. So yeah, it's basically that whole energy utilization which has been
I know. I also read about in Sri Lanka that we actually use 60 liters of water per kilo of paddy, which just blew me away because we actually use rice every day for and then I was thinking maybe we should start something immediately because people are not aware in these situations. So talking about these wastage of water, wastage of food, and it actually brings a lot of difference into the climate as well, and it's most probably a cause for climate change because the usage of water and the wastage of it. So moving into Sikandar, you are very active about climate activism. We often hear about climate change, but please tell us what climate activism is.
Just I want to give some thoughts like as a youth perspective, what we think about the climate activism. So what we see, like the whole world is in some sort of in a crisis. We can see in the political instability in the Middle East, financial crisis in Europe, but all around the world, young people are really concerned about this climate change and the effect of climate change, how it affects their lives. And young people, we are some sort of fresh-minded people. We are more creative, dynamic, diverse, and we have more energy. So I feel that young people have to get engaged to these issues.
Of course, yes.
Especially like as my colleagues mentioned, access to schools, access to corporate, government, etc. We have more access to everywhere. So in one hand, we try to change the attitude of the young people, and second hand, influencing for a better, to build up a good planet.
Yes.
To me, to you, and to everyone.
Exactly.
So
to
that's our natural resources and the environment. So activism is some sort of which comes from that enthusiasm, the passionate, that we should feel that it's not the global problem, it's my problem because I am a part of that problem.
Yes.
Today the climate change, it's like a hot topic in the global arena. It's discussed everywhere. So we have to think in a global way, but finally we have to act locally.
Exactly.
So that comes from activism, that you have to think the bigger picture. This is what will happen, but how, that's up to you.
Yes, of course.
How you utilize your skills and capacities. So that's some sort of activism, I feel.
Exactly, that's very interesting. Thank you so much, Husni, Joanne, and Sikandar for joining us today. We got to know a lot of things, and we are very privileged to have you here. The other thing is that I'm very impressed that all of you are very enthusiastically involved in environmental causes, and that being representatives of this generation, you are making a move out there. So I'm very, very impressed, and we are very honored to have you here. We are moving on to a very short commercial break, so don't go away. We have more stuff after this.